Finding Mr. Bridges, the most fascinating man you've never heard of. Hopeless romantic, rock star preacher, leader of men, and parish priest.
Hello, my name is Phil, and I grew up in a small village in Northamptonshire called Barton Seagrave. From September 1995, on most weekdays, I would catch the bus to school, and the bus would take us right past Bolton Hall. I must have gone past that hall hundreds of times, and not once did I stop and think that 250 years previously, Margarita Bridges had sold it to the Bishop of Rochester. I had absolutely zero reason to know or care that particular detail. I also had no reason to care that as she was arranging that sale, she may well have received a message from her cousin, Brooke Bridges, telling her that just 4 miles away in Orlingbury, he'd just become a father to a son who he'd named Nathaniel. That's quite a niche set of circumstances to be of any interest to a 12-year-old. But to a 42-year-old Phil, they are incredibly poignant details. Because today, I am the vicar of Willoughby in Warwickshire, and that baby, born in Orlingbury, did the exact same job that I do now, but 250 years before me. He grew up 4 miles away from where I grew up. He was ordained in the same cathedral that I was ordained in, and he championed and set up many of the same charities and organisations that I still support today. This is Finding Mr. Bridges, the story of a man who trod the exact same ground that I walk, but 2.5 centuries before me. I'm going to explore how my life and his life are incredibly similar in some ways, but are vastly different in others. We're going to begin our story in Orlingbury, when Nathaniel Bridges was 43, exactly the same age that I am now. You see, he is at the exact halfway point in his life, and the moment we are going to look at today has a profound effect on how the second half of his life is going to play out.
Nathaniel took a deep breath and allowed the February chill to numb his senses. This was the moment when his life would change forever. He'd planned, he'd calculated, he'd acted, and now it was all to come to fruition. In a few moments, the final piece of the jigsaw would be in place. He would have done everything required to complete the transition from Dr. Bridges the bachelor to the Reverend Dr. Bridges, respected vicar of Willoughby, preaching the gospel. Crucially, supported and encouraged by a doting wife. He'd previously reconciled himself to the possibility that Francis would say no. But as he stood looking at the heavy iron gates slung between their patterned stone pillars, the possibility suddenly became terrifying. He tried to push it away. She might say yes. Frances Young was the right woman for him. She wasn't like other women. Frances had the right temperament. Her religious views dovetailed perfectly with his own. She was completely suitable, utterly unlike the exhausting performative women he encountered at Oxford. She'd always been friendly toward him, far friendlier than any of his other congregants. He knew her father thought well of him too. There was no logical reason to feel this suffocating anxiety, but for some reason, he did. He took one final look at the gateway and offered up a silent, internal prayer. It was the anchor that had served him through the last 43 years, and the one he would rely on for the next 43. Thy will be done.
As our story begins, it feels like we're starting with a Jane Austen novel, doesn't it? We've got Bridges standing at the gates to Orlingbury Hall, and he's about to go and ask Frances Young to marry him. And it is very much like a Jane Austen story as we explore what happens and we explore how he got to this place. We'll see that there is all sorts of considerations that you might see in a Jane Austen that you won't find in Four Weddings and a Funeral. all sorts of calculations about whether Bridges has enough money to be able to ask Francis to marry him, all sorts of consideration regarding social status and whether it's an appropriate match and all that kind of thing. Because actually, this is a moment he's been planning and preparing for. And actually, it's a moment that he wasn't sure would ever come. So to really get into his head and what is going on at this moment in time, we are going to listen to a letter that Bridges sent to his good friend Martin Routh. And he sent this letter 12 months before the proposal that we have just heard is about to take place.
My dear friend, I have just been relieved from much anxiety by the arrival of your letter. My intimate friends are but few, therefore the more valuable. I thought you were ill and could not but be somewhat anxious for you, more so than if I had many persons as dear to me as you are. Besides, I was under some apprehension about the resignation, whether or no it was received, or whether it was in due form. I was astonished at the balance you mention. The fellowships are now so great that a living of £200 a year will scarce ever be taken by a senior fellow. But I shall not regret my exchange if the good faith of the college is not attempted to be violated by 2 or 3 persons of no great principle in the society. You seem to sympathize with my distress. Not even my own brother knew it. The case is, as you guess, a worthy lady, daughter of a respectable country gentleman, vulgo dicto esquire, is the object of my love. But the alliance cannot take place, at least not yet, perhaps never. I feel much, but I hope religion has taught me to subscribe cordially to that divine apothegm, thy will be done. I have many blessings, all undeserved. Therefore, why should I repine because I can't have everything I long for? Yet should I obtain the lady in question, there would be the fairest prospect of happiness, for her temper and religion are much more suitable to my own than the turn of mind, gaiety, etc. of some certain ladies who visit me at the lodgings.
Take a step back to see what's going on here. So the first thing to say is that at this point in time, Bridges is a fellow at Magdalen College, Oxford. Now, a fellow is a professional academic in Oxford, and it was actually quite a cushy life. You had your board and your lodgings paid for you. You didn't actually have that much work that you had to do, so you basically were paid to hang around in Oxford. So it's quite a lucrative work. He has been at Oxford for kind of 25 years at this moment in time, so he's quite a senior fellow as well. This Martin Routh that he is exchanging letters with is going to go on to become the president of Magdalen College, Oxford. So he is in a very privileged position right now. But the only kind of snag with being a fellow at Magdalen is that you are forbidden to marry. So you have to be single to be a fellow. If you want to get married, then you need to resign your fellowship to go and get married, basically. And that is what Bridges has decided to do. The letter starts with his anxiety about whether his resignation has been received and is in right order, which shows that he's already submitted his resignation. So this is 12 months before he's asked Francis to marry him. So resigning is kind of one step in the journey that he takes towards this proposal. But there's a number of other things that he has to do in order to make this proposal possible. So as well as resigning as a fellow in order to marry Frances Young, he also has to make some other changes in order to be able to keep her in the manner to which she has become accustomed should she say yes. See, Frances Young is the daughter of the Lord of the Manor, in Orlingbury, so she's used to a certain lifestyle. And if Bridges is going to ask her to marry her, then he needs to show that he can keep her in that manner that she's become accustomed to. Now, his fellowship was his primary source of income. And because he's resigned it, that's cut out a large chunk of his income. He still does have some cash coming in because he's the Vicar of Orlingbury and he's the Vicar of Waddenhoe, but that's not enough to pay the kind of bills he's going to rack up as the husband of Frances Young. So he has his eyes set on Willoughby, which is a much more prestigious parish and a parish that will pay him a lot more. And that's what he ties up with. As I said, we will explore this in more detail in a later episode because he has to make some compromises and some sacrifices. But for our purposes right now, he gets there in 1791. So he's resigned in 1792. He's picked up Willoughby Vicarage in 1791. So now in 1793, he is ready to go and ask Frances to marry him. So what did Frances Young say when Bridges went to ask her to marry him? I'm not going to tell you right now. You're going to have to hold on a couple of episodes to find out. But before I leave you to stew on that, let's just think through some of the possibilities and some of the things that might be going on here. Because Bridges is doing something quite odd. You have to resign your fellowship in order to marry, but you don't have to resign your fellowship in order to ask someone. So there was a safe option there for him to ask her and then only resign if she said yes. But he's resigned preemptively by 12 months. What's going on here? Remember, he says the match cannot take place. Certainly not now. Maybe never. So he's resigned at a point where he knows he's not ready to ask her to marry him. And he said it, and he's resigned in full knowledge that he might never be able to ask her to marry him. So what on earth is going on here? I think perhaps if you'd asked one of the Phils sitting on the bus in Barton Seagrave that question, you might have got two different possible answers, and it might have depended on when you'd asked me. If you had asked me when I was 15 or 16, in that kind of age where you're brooding, your hormones are going mad, and you're into girls for the first time, then actually maybe that 15, 16-year-old Phil would say, well, this is the ultimate romantic gesture, isn't it? He's taking these sweeping steps to show Frances what she means to him, to show her what he's willing to sacrifice for her, so that when he does ask her, she's more likely to say yes. He's got everything in order, ready for her, so that she will be swept off her feet. That's what romantic, hormonal 15-year-old Phil might have said. But 12-year-old Phil, who was maybe a bit more in the girls phase of life, might have had a slightly different take on all this. He might have been wondering if actually Bridges had his eye on adventure, and his plan for Frances Young was that she would be his partner in adventure. But actually this was not about Frances Young, this new parish in Willoughby, this resigning his fellowship and going out of the cosy worlds of Oxford. Maybe this wasn't about romance and love. Maybe, just maybe, this is an adventure that Bridges is about to go on. And 42-year-old Phil? Well, 42-year-old Phil thinks it might be a little bit of both. We'll see. In our next episode, we are going to have a little look at some of the lengths that Bridges went to in order to secure Willoughby, in order to have the income to finally make the proposal in 1793.